I want to show you another story here in the Bible. It's just in John 12, I believe. Or no way, I'm sorry. Don't go there. Go to Psalm 46. I want to show you a piece of something that David said. David in the midst of a psalm. He says, "Come and see the works of the Lord, the desolations He has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." And I want you to understand what is being said here, the context of what the psalmist is saying. He's saying, look at the works of God in the earth. It is incredible. It is awesome what God is doing. As wonderful and as powerful as man is in all his armies, God steps in and He can shred them in a second. God is incredible. Look at the display of His handiwork in the earth. And the psalmist said, be still. Be still and know, see that He is God. Be still, see what God is doing. Stop being in such a hurry. Be still. Notice what God is up to. As I was reading this story, I thought of this story in John 12, somewhat of a humorous story almost. When Jesus is talking, He's prophetically talking about the death that He's about to face on the cross. And He says, "Whoever serves Me must follow Me. And where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves Me. Now my heart is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify Your name." Jesus is saying that still. And then a voice came from heaven. "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." And the crowd that was there and heard it said it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to Him. Jesus said, "This voice was for your benefit, not mine." A voice of God speaking into the earth. The Bible says, according to this story, that there were many there that heard it. And their only response was, "Oh, it just thundered." God speaking to a people in one of the most crucial times in history. Jesus is getting ready to go to the cross and save humanity. And God is going to speak from heaven to verify that this is my Son. You need to listen to Him. You need to observe and see what He's about to do. I'm about to be greatly glorified. Observe this. Stop. Take notice of this. And the people that were there, most of them said, "All I heard was thunder." They heard a sound, but they didn't recognize it as the sound of God. I was reminded, because we're not that far removed from the creation study that we did this year, I think it was, earlier in the year. And I remember that we had talked about one day that when Adam and Eve was in the garden and everything was well established and they were communing with God, it appears there's that one little statement that would allude to that God would come in some kind of form, that God and Adam and Eve would walk together in the cool of the day. And they became familiar with God. They became familiar with His voice. In fact, so familiar that when Adam and Eve fell into sin and they were hiding from God, God came for His evening walk with them. And the Bible says that Adam and Eve heard the sound of God coming into the garden. From the very beginning, God wired us, made us, created us in a way where we would know the sounds of God. We would be able to observe and see the sounds of God. One person would hear thunder and we'd say, "That was God. God just spoke to me." One person would see a bush on fire and go, "Wow, that's weird," and walk on by. Another person would stop and hear the voice of God in that burning bush. Throughout the Bible is the record, time after time after time, where God would speak to human beings. And never does it really give us the details of how it happened. But the times we do get the details, we see enough that God speaks in all kinds of ways. I like this story in 1 Kings here with Elijah, because Elijah was a prophet. He was a man that was used to hearing from God. The Lord said to Elijah, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by," just like the garden. And then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart, shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. I want you to understand the reason that the Bible is painting this picture is because that was ways that God had been speaking before. Elijah was used to God speaking through all these means. And when Elijah heard the gentle whisper, he pulled his cloak over his face. In other words, he shut out the world. He shut out everything around him. And he went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And then, once he stopped, once he was still, once he shut out everything else, he cloaked himself into the presence of God. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" There's no need to go past this because this isn't our story today. The moral to the story is just that God said, "I want to speak to you. And you're going to have to listen close because how I spoke last time may not be how I speak next time." You've got to observe. You've got to pay attention. You've got to stop. You've got to be still. You've got to stop being in such a hurry all the time in life. I want you to know, Cornerstone Family Church, if ever there was a word from God for the American church, it is this word today in this hour. Never have we become so busy. Never. Things that we used to do and enjoy are just now the next thing on the checklist. Well, I got to cook supper. Got to sit down with my family, eat a meal. We do it in a rush and we choke it down and we wonder why it's not digesting and we wonder why we've got ulcers and we wonder why we're so unhealthy because we're always going through McDonald's drive-thru because we're always in a hurry to get to the next place instead of just learning how to come home and say, you know what, 10 things are pulling on me. I can't do all 10. What's the priority?